Hello, football fans. My name is Conor McGilligan. This is the Conor McGilligan channel. And today we're going to be speaking about Chris Wilder and if he should be sacked from Sheffield United. Let me know in the comment section below what you guys think on this one immediately, everybody. Let us know, as I've mentioned in the comment section below, exactly what you think. It's a bit of a controversial one today. Let's move into it. So reports are saying that Chris Wilder is likely to be sacked today, barely 3 weeks after the heartbreaking playoff final loss to Sunderland. The club's American owners, COH Sports, are said to be having conversations behind the scenes about Chris Wilder's future and are set to make an immediate decision, with some executives backing Wilder and some executives not backing him and wanting a clean slate. Now, a key factor seems to be the data-driven approach of which a lot of these reports are fueled by. This has led Sheffield United to make 3 signings, of which are very, very unknown when it comes to recruitment, and are really focusing on this brand new method that they've got, which is identifying teams and players from around the world. This has been successfully done by teams like Brentford, but it's been very unsuccessfully led by teams like Barnsley as well. So there's a bit of a hit and a miss rate with it. So it's going to be fascinating to see how this moves. But is Chris Wilder the right man to be going forward with this new approach, which we all know in football, it has to be sporting director-led and recruitment-led before managerial. It is the modern way, and that's what we're going to get into today. So Wilder led the club to 90 championship points, finishing third, a commendable tally, although they did lose the playoff final. And this marks, obviously, Wilder's second spell at Sheffield United, an absolute hero for a lot of the Blades. They're huge fans of him. Feels like across the fandom, there is definitely a more positive swing towards Chris Wilder staying at the club. It feels to be the vocal minority who was saying they'd like him to leave, but there's two sides, I should say, of the coin here, of which you can look at. Maybe it is the sentiment, it's the fan side of things, which maybe has got Chris Wilder into a little bit of trouble this season, and there's the other side of it, which is the modern approach to football, of which some may deem that Chris Wilder is a little bit of a dying art. When you look at the new owners as well, and you look at maybe the erratic nature and some bits and bats when it comes to Chris Wilder, we all love it when it comes to brashness and sort of feelings being put out there, but maybe a new American approach coming into the club, the new ownership at Sheffield United might look at this and say this is lacking class, lacking decorum, and ultimately maybe costing the team, a very young team, in the big moments this season. You look at the 3-game span of which Sheffield United sort of dropped off, Oxford, Millwall and Plymouth in particular, of which was highlighted nationally really, of Chris Wilder just completely losing his head after they beat Sheffield Wednesday. He's singing Sausage Roll in the pub, obviously about Sheffield Wednesday's manager Danny Roll, which to the general man in the street would say that is hilarious. But is football going that way when it comes to just being that provocative and being that sort of angsty and just going out and having beers and being part of the lads, really? And it's what we all love to see. But is football going that way, or is it not? It feels like maybe it's not, and we're moving on. It's going to be fascinating to see if the American ownership do see it that way. Chris Wilder, for me, exceeded expectations by taking Sheffield United from a 2-point deduction to a playoff spot. And obviously we've spoken about him being deeply connected to Sheffield United culture and being just embedded within that club. We've mentioned the data-led recruitment vision as well, and could that be seen as a little bit of a difference in the boardroom? But there's something to take into context as well when you're kind of looking at the squad just here. Michael Cooper, Chowdhury, Ahmed Hodzic, Jack Robinson, Harrison Burrows, Sidney Peck, Vinny Souza, Raksaki, O'Hare, Hamer, Tyrese Campbell, Kiefer Moore, Ryan Brewster, Arblaster, who's obviously not been fit this season, but Harry Souttar, who unfortunately went back as well with injuries. But they brought Tom Cannon in for £10 million under that new ownership, was barely utilised, hasn't really got to that next level. And in football, the results are immediate. You have to get these results immediate from these players. You have to get the performances, and they'll see that they've come in and given Chris Wilder a huge asset in Tom Cannon here, who's doing very well, of course, for Stoke City. And he's not utilised him as much as maybe we all would have thought he would have. But Ty Campbell's been unbelievable. And then you could give Chris Wilder a lot of plaudits for getting the best out of Ty Campbell, who's not really got to this level in his entire career, really. You know, goals per night, he was flying. So at one stage, he was the best and probably most potent number 9 in the division. That's massive credit to Chris Wilder. But across the board, for me, this is a very good team in the Championship. I think it is a very decent team. Very lucky to have Sidney Peck in there. Obviously, when Arbas has gone out, they both came through the ranks together, but Peck has been unbelievable. Could you say that Wilder's really harnessed him as well. Raksaki's not really got the best out of Raksaki. He's a massive talent, huge talent on paper. It's a really good acquisition by Sheffield United, albeit on loan. Callum O'Hare, has he got the best out of O'Hare, who was brilliant for Coventry? Not sure he has. So it is a stacked squad. It's a very good squad at championship level. And some may say that Chris Wilder just hasn't got enough out of it. And that team, some would say, had to beat Sunderland in the playoff final and ultimately didn't. So there's a real balancing act when it comes to Wilder. I don't really know where I stand on it, to be honest with you. As I say, the accrued points put Sheffield United at a very good total this year when it comes to attacking this season. Give him another season, and could Chris Wilder get that Sheffield United side up? Or has this new data-led approach gone past Chris Wilder? Because how much of a say will he now have on players? Is he going to go fully in on this data-led approach, of which we've only really seen in modern football maybe Thomas Frank have a consistent approach with the data-led method and really work with that recruitment team? That's publicised that Thomas Frank has a key handling on that with the people down at Brentford. But that is the sort of platform that Brentford have built down there. It is recruitment strategy, but Thomas Frank is a real student of the game as well, so wants a key hand on that. Is Chris Wilder that guy? And is that something that Sheffield United are wanting going forward? Do they want to really invest in that programme, effectively bring in unknowns for good value for money and get Chris Wilder to work with these players? Will Chris Wilder be happy with that? Will that be something that Wilder will look at and think to himself, okay, I can work with that, and do the club believe that he can do that as well? I'm not 100% sure. Now, we're going to get into 5 reasons of which I think are probably reasons that the ownership may be looking at Chris Wilder and thinking, yeah, we can get rid of you for this upcoming season. So we'll start off with the final. Did the owners see it as a year of which was a rebuilding year? Or have they seen it now with the loss to Sunderland as a year of stagnation, not progress? That's maybe what it's looking at from an ownership model. 10 million quid on Tom Cannon from a new ownership standpoint will have been huge. It will have been your Hamza Chowdhury coming in, replacements across the board, players coming in for Sheffield United of which can give them that little boost. And that's what they'll have expected. Were Sheffield United the 3rd best team in the Championship this season when it came to resources? Many would argue yes. Maybe the ownership would argue yes as well. Them losing to Sunderland in that final could be a massive psychological and financial blow. We know it's going to be a financial blow because they've got less parachute payments, and it's going to be trickier for them next season with the calibre of teams that are in the division next year, even when it comes to Birmingham, Wrexham coming up. And then you look at Ipswich, you look at Southampton, who are going to be there and thereabouts. You've got strong teams still in the Championship when it comes to Coventry and Bristol City and co. It's going to be tough. Leicester City, where are they going to land as well? But everybody kind of recognises that the Championship next season is going to be much stronger than it was this season. This season was a massive opportunity, and whatever happened with Wilder when it comes to improving players, exodus at the beginning of the season, it felt like he kind of had to get up this year, and that's kind of how they felt, evidently, when it came to January and that little investment. Number 2 is, has Chris Wilder evolved? That's the question. This guy came into the Premier League with a 3-5-2 approach, which was unheard of. It was incredible. Mourinho loved it as well. Lots of comments about him massively respecting Chris Wilder. Nobody had ever seen it with Egan and O'Connell. It was fantastic to see Norwood at the base. Sheffield United were a very, very attractive team to watch. But since then, critics have argued maybe that Chris Wilder has become a little bit stale when it comes to pragmatism. He's become a little bit predictable against low blocks. He struggles, and Sheffield United have struggled through massive portions of this season. And high-pressure games as well. When you're looking at those Sunderland games, they won one, they lost one. The Burnley games, they lost twice. The Leeds United games, they lost twice. They're high-pressure situations of which Chris Wilder hasn't been able to get that Sheffield United team through. That could be a problem when it comes to the ownership. According to some of these reports as well, some of the players have become increasingly frustrated with this rigid system and lacking that creative freedom, of which is what Chris Wilder was known for in that 3-5-2 system all the way back when. Now, Sheffield United finished with one of the worst disciplinary records in the league, and Chris Wilder, especially towards the end, and stuff with Danny Roll, just basically throughout the season, the unsavoury scenes with Plymouth and before Plymouth, he basically put himself in the firing line here for criticism. And we know he's a fan. We know there's massive sentiment attached to Chris Wilder, but you have got to separate that a little bit. And I feel he's really struggled maybe with the pressure this season. And that has become abundantly obvious. And with a new ownership, with new bosses at work, if you have them, if you got an employee coming in and he's acting up and he's getting a few notches on his belt when it comes to disciplinaries, it is almost 3 strikes and out. And Wilder's definitely had 1 or 2 of those this season. You wonder if that's playing on the owner's mind. Now, we've spoken about the mismatch with the data-led approach as well. This is how football's going. Football is going down a sporting director recruitment-led approach. Why? Because these people work with a high analytical team, a recruitment team that base things on data, AI, strategy, quantitative data. Chris Wilder has always been a figurehead who wants the final say on transfers. This could be massive problems when it comes to the boardroom. And when they're talking about Chris Wilder and when they're talking about an evolution of the manager, not a regression of the manager, he needs to move with the times. He needs to develop on his own managerial game to get into this sort of ethos and this way of working, because this is how the management game is right now. If you stick with Chris Wilder right now, and he's been stubborn when it comes to the recruitment data-led approach, then what is the point? Because regardless, you're going to get up to the Premier League and effectively you're probably going to sack Chris Wilder. That will probably happen regardless if you get into the Premier League, because when you get to the Premier League, there cannot be discontentment in the boardroom when it comes to a recruitment approach, because if you get it wrong, you go straight back down, and that's millions invested and millions lost for the new American ownership. So that's something to take into consideration as well. Now, another reason could be Chris Wilder signed a new contract in January, but there will be a clause in that contract you expect that he will be able to get out of, or they will be able to get Chris Wilder out of, dependent on promotion. That is almost a certainty in the modern game. And sacking him right now means that the new guy comes in, he can plan, he can assess, he can sign new players, and gives Sheffield United a bit of a strategy and a blueprint and a foundation, again, to build on to go for promotion. Obviously, Sheffield United will be now facing a little bit more financial strain when it comes to parachute payments. Chris Wilder may then have to work with a little bit of a threadbare squad. There might be a lot of youth that he has to work with. They might look to the academy a little bit more. They'll bring players in, but it might have to be really strategy-led. And that's, you've seen them bring in, obviously, I believe it was the young Nigerian. This might be the way of which Chris Wilder has to harness these young talents based on their data. So will Wilder struggle with that? And is that something that they're going to have to take into consideration? We saw Chris Wilder's massive success was the bedrock of that was experience. Bedrock of that team, the 3-5-2 team, the Sheffield United 2019-2020 team, was experience. He would have to change again to be able to work with these players, it would feel. And also, when you look at the free agent managers right now, you look at the likes of Sean Dyche, you look at the likes of Steve Cooper, maybe the new ownership approach want kind of a Chris Wilder manager who, can come in and is proven of getting out of the championship, of which Cooper and obviously Dyche are, but maybe they want a little bit more modernization with managers who've worked in these sort of approaches, of which those two have. And I think really big thing here is detaching a manager from Sheffield United in terms of being a fan. I think from a PR perspective, that will probably be huge for an American ownership, or just a general new ownership, I'd say. Sure, this isn't just about Chris Wilder being the manager of Sheffield United. It's whether or not Chris Wilder can be the manager of Sheffield United 2.0, a modern, sustainable, promotion-hungry club with a new identity. Let me know, guys, what you think in the comment section below to this. Do you think it's madness, or do you think it's correct? Make sure you subscribe, like, and comment. I'll see you in a bit. Cheers.